Hey guys, welcome to our channel Coding with Karthik. So here is our second section about Python Flask tutorial. So in the first section we covered basics like what is Flask and why it is micro framework, and we created one sample application using Flask framework. And here is our second session. So here we're going to discuss about how to do the routing and what are the variable rules and how to redirect to the other endpoints and how to build the URL from the endpoint. So these are all like very useful topics for any web developer. So please be focused on these topics, okay? Yeah. And now, so before we start the session, I request you to please like and share the videos and also subscribe to our channel Coding with Karthik and click on the bell icon to get the latest updates. So I'm just asking you because it's kind of encouragement for me to make more and more videos, or I can come up with more tutorials and different programmings. Okay, yeah. Thank you for watching, and let's begin the session. Yeah. So here is our first application we created in the first session. So let me open browser also. So yeah, here is our browser. So now let me explain what is happening. So what is happening? So yeah, this is what routing we say. So here we are just routed. That means this is our basic. I mean, this is a root endpoint for our application. So that means even if you see any web application, right? So it will direct to this endpoint slash show, which is generally some kind of home page, right? So yeah. Now, first of all, our first topic in this section is what is routing, right? So basically, routing is nothing but which route specific endpoint to the specific function logic or some logic to execute the specific task or what are the logic, right? So that means it's like suppose we are just trying to create this endpoint URL for this application, but we just have to define specific logic for this endpoint, right? So that is what routing. That means the way that we do that means the way that we fill gap between the URL and the logic, right? So that is what routing. So that means when you have one endpoint, you should have some logic behind that endpoint to respond, right? So to do that, we are going to use, that is what routing, and for that we are going to use this app.route decorator in Flask application. So that means, so this is decorator in the sense I will just cover this topic in my Python basic tutorial, but here it is like this route function will pass this definition to this uh, it will consider this definition as a view function. So and also we have like we can pass some endpoint name also. That means this endpoint name we can use it for URL building. That means we can if you by using the endpoint name we can get this URL rule. Okay, so yeah, finally this route method will will map this URL to this function. So and also if you don't pass any endpoint name, it will consider this function name as the endpoint name. Okay, so this endpoint name concept you will understand in the fourth topic, that is URL building. So then you will understand what is the use of endpoint name. So for now I'll just yeah, here we can pass. So endpoint equal to something like, I'm just passing home page. Okay, just home. So this is what, so we'll use this endpoint in the URL building concept, but for now you can consider like if we don't pass this endpoint name, it will consider this function name as a endpoint name. So this is how the basic routing in Python Flask. But this routing also, this route decorator basically will call one function Python. So which will we can directly use it function to create the uh, to map the endpoint to the view function. Okay, so view function is nothing but this is the view function. Okay, so what are the function that is going to be satisfy the endpoint, right? So that is what we call view function. Yeah. Now here what is that, right? So we have like sorry, not this one. So we have one function. So this is actually here, see, this is the app is instance of the Flask object. So that means this Flask object has method like add. this Flask class has the like add URL rule, so which is basically being used by the app route creator. So that means this function finally will call this add URL rule to add the endpoint. Okay, so anyways we'll directly use it app route. I'm just giving this example to understand how this works. Okay, either you can use this or you can directly use this new approach. Okay, so here we just do the same thing. Let's say I'm going to create something like portal. Okay, so here the endpoint name I'm just giving the portal. Okay, so here I'm going to create one definition. So sorry, not here. Yeah. So here we need to pass the view function. So which is so first I will create that function. Okay, def portal page. Okay, return. Yeah, here is portal page. Okay, so now I just map this. Yeah. So that means we are mapping this function portal page to this URL rule using this add URL rule. Okay, so this is how we can map. Now, yeah. So let's open the browser and let's see what is happening. Okay, our endpoint is this portal, right? So let's go to the browser and let's see what is happening. See, here is the portal page. So that is how the endpoint works. Okay, so that means whatever the here this method will map this endpoint. I mean this rule and this endpoint name and this view function. Okay, and again I'm telling this endpoint name is optional. So if we don't pass the endpoint name, it will consider this view function name as the endpoint name. So we'll discuss about this usage in the fourth topic, that is URL building topic. Okay, yeah, I think this is how the basic routing works in Python Flask. So, and also we'll see more in detail when we are going to discuss about HTTP methods in the next session, like how to handle different query parameters and all those stuffs in the next coming up session. Okay, yeah. And here the second topic is variable rules. So that means if you want to construct URL using some dynamic values, right, then we can use this variables. So for that variables we can add we can restrict some data type that can accept. So first we'll see the what is variable in routing, and we'll see how to what are the rules for it, and how can we add rule to that variable to accept the request. Okay, yeah. Now, yeah. Anyways, I will use this example. Okay, so yeah, I will create one more endpoint. Okay, so app route. Let me create one endpoint users. Okay. So yeah, and also this route method by default will consider as, if you don't pass any options, right, it will consider as the get method. So we'll have few options to if you want some post method, we'll have to pass some options to it. So we'll discuss in the HTTP methods topic in the session 3. Okay, and now we'll see here. So here I'm just going to use users. So return. So hi. So here, so the thing is, so let's say if you want the URL based on the specific user, right? Something like username or user ID. So first let's go with the username. So for that, so we can pass like this. Okay, this is the username variable, and I'm just going to use this username. So that means so that means we can call the endpoint using something like slash user slash we can pass some username. So by that we can again we can pass the username to the view function, and we can use that variable inside the view function. So this is how we can dynamically construct the URL using the variables. So now let's open the browser and we'll see what is happening. Okay, so user slash, let me give some Karthik. Say hi Karthik, right? So if I change something, let's say Vinay. Okay, so say hi Vinay. So that means whatever the variable, whatever the value we are passing for this variable, right, username, we'll pass that to the function, and we can use that variable inside the view function. So this is a use of variable. And now what is variable rules? Okay, what is variable rule? So even for this variable value, right, we can restrict to which data type it should accept. Something like we have a few data types that we can accept. So that is like by default it will consider the string, but instead of that we can pass it should be the int type or float type, or it can be a path. So path means it accepts some slashes. Okay, yeah. Now let's see some example to understand how it is. So for that we have to give let's say instead of that username, so I'm going to use something like user ID. Okay, so yeah, so let's see the browser. So 1 second. Let's see. Still we are getting the high Vinay, okay? But the thing is user ID means it should be something like generally let's say consider if user ID should must be an integer, okay? So then this route should not work with the string type of user ID value. Like something if I pass Karthik or Vinay, it is able to capture the it is accepting a request but it is pausing a request, right? But what we have to do is right. So if you want to accept only integer type you have to give something like this. Okay, then here anyways integer we have to concat using the str method. Okay, now let's see what happens. See, not found. We have the endpoint, but we are restricting that endpoint to accept only integer type. So that's why it is not able to accept the request. It is showing that request not found in the browser. So that means even not a int, we can pass the float, or we can pass some path, or we can pass something integer, float, or path, right? So these are variable. These are the data types that we can pass to this variable. So this is what variable do. That means uh, we can restrict these variables with a specific data type. And now if you pass just like integer, okay, let me pass something like 1 2 3 which is integer. So see, so this is working fine without any issue since we are passing the integer value, right? So this is what a variable do. And our next topic is redirect. So that means, so from the one endpoint we can redirect to the other endpoint. Okay, so let's see how that works. Okay, now let's say, yeah, now let me create one route. Okay, app dot route of, so users, so def users home, so return, so this is one function, let's say users home page. So that means we just created one users home page. And also for any application basically we'll have two kind of pages. One is user end user level and one is admin level. So let me create one more application, one more route for admin. So def admin page. So here we are just returning, yeah, admin home page. Okay, now that means if you directly check, right, yeah. See, here is the home page, and if you pass admin, so this is the admin home page. Okay, now where we can use a redirect, right? So let me just create one more route to explain how it works. Okay, app.route of, so let me have something like portal and also user type. So this will be variable. Okay, user type. Okay, and let me just create portal page, will be portal. So here, so uh, we'll just accept this user type value. So this can be a users or admin. Okay, if user type equal to user, then we'll import one function from the Flask redirect. Okay, so using this method we can redirect to the users page. So if user type is user, then we'll redirect to the users endpoint. Okay, so we'll see. So redirect of, so let me see what is endpoint slash users, right? So and we're just going to this endpoint. Okay. Now else, in this case we'll redirect to the, so admin page. Okay, so that means, so we have one portal endpoint So with the user type, either user or admin. So if we get the user type as user, we'll pass to the will redirect to the user's home page. So otherwise we'll redirect to the admin home page. Okay. So let's see how it works in the. So I think we already have this portal page. Yeah, so since see, so we already have one endpoint with the portal name. So here also, if you don't pass the endpoint name, it will consider this view function as a endpoint name. So that's why it is throwing error. So overwriting the existing endpoint function portal. So for that, I will just create portal home. Okay. Now I'll just run this. See, now I'm just going to call this endpoint from the browser. So portal, let's say user. Yeah, sorry, I should return. Sorry for that. So we just have to return this. So then only it will return the return to the other place. Yeah, same. So that means if it is user type, sorry, portal user same. So actually we are um, trying to load this endpoint, but it is redirected to the user's page, right? So since we have given like we are redirecting the slash users, right? So that's why whenever we get the user type as user, it is going to the slash users page. So now let's check the admin page. Okay. So what is that portal? So instead of the user, we'll pass the admin. So if I enter C, so it is going to the admin page. So this is how the redirect works. Now, I think I got the redirect also. Now, next topic is URL building. So, we discussed about the what is the endpoint name, and it is like basically this routing or this add URL rule. Right? So, it is mapping the URL name and the endpoint. So that means URL rule and endpoint name and view function. So here, so we can get the URL using the endpoint, and that is what URL building. So this will be useful when we discuss about the templates. So that means we are going to use the Ginger templates for the to page the load. I mean to load the pages. So in that case, instead of providing the URL rule, right, something like portal slash user type or something slash users, right. So instead of that, we can directly use one function. So that is URL for function. So using that, we can pass the endpoint name. So it will get the um, it will I mean it will get the uh, URL path. So by that we can use that URL path for any clickable actions in the template, or it's like even we can use it for some this redirect function also. Okay, so let me do that now. So here instead of this, what I will do is, so I'll import one function URL for. Okay, so this is what URL building. Okay, so here I'm just going to use return redirect of. So what we'll do is URL for, and we'll use users. Okay, so that means so here is the users uh, here is the users endpoint name. So basically we should pass the function name. So since we haven't passed any um any endpoint name, right? So this function name will consider as a endpoint name. So that's why we are passing this user home for URL for function. Okay, that means using this endpoint name, it will get this URL slash users, and it will use this redirect function to redirect to the users page. And here also similarly, so return, so redirect of URL for, and here we'll use what is the endpoint name, so admin page. Yeah. So now if I go here and if I check portal slash user, right, it is going to the users page. So this is how the URL for URL building works. That means we can build the URL from the URL rule from this endpoint name. So that means it is very useful when you go for the templates. Okay, yeah, and also here, yeah, and now let's see the use of endpoint name. So if I pass the endpoint name, okay, so endpoint equal to, let's say, admin. Okay, now so this will definitely will not work. So since here the endpoint name is admin, so before we haven't provided an endpoint name, so that's why it was considering this admin page as the endpoint name. But now we are passing that endpoint name is admin, so then it will not work. So let's see that what will the error in the browser. Okay, so I saved it. Now I'm going to the browser, so I'm going to type portal/admin. See, so build error, so that means couldn't find the URL for the endpoint in admin page. So that's why we need to pass this endpoint name here. So if I pass this, let me reload the page, say admin homepage. So this is how endpoint name is useful when you're going to build the URL. And also there's one more use using this URL for function. So that is let's say later you can change this endpoint as per your requirement. Maybe you can change this URL as per your requirement. Something like, because sometimes if it is not understand the user, right, you will change this endpoint as per as much as meaningful. So in that case, then we don't need to concern about this endpoint name, or wherever we are using that endpoint, right? We don't need to concern about the what is the actual URL. So we are directly using this endpoint name. So by that, whatever the updated URL, right? So that will be fetched from using this function, and that will be used for the any purpose. Okay, so that is how useful using the endpoint name. Yeah, I think, yeah. So this is what URL building. So we are using URL for function to get the URL root. Yeah, and not only this, we'll discuss about URL for in the template section. So when you are going to use a Jinja templates, we mostly use this URL for any specific URL if you want to place in the template. Okay, and now I think that's it for this section. So yeah, let me just again. Let's go to the entire session again. So we'll do the summary. We'll just go to the summary. Yeah. The first topic is routing. So we are using this applet route decorator for routing. So where we have to pass the rule, and also we can pass the endpoint name. Okay, like this is the endpoint rule, and this is the endpoint name, and this is the view function. So that means this applet route is mapping this URL and this endpoint name and this view function. So anyways, this decorator finally will call this add URL rule, and still we can use either this one or this one, depends on, mostly we'll go with this approach. But if you need some specific understanding how it works, right, then you can try this function also. So here also the same, we are passing the URL rule and endpoint name and view function. And if you don't pass the endpoint name, it will consider this view function name as the endpoint name, and this will be useful when you use it for URL building for URL for function. And yeah, so our next topic is variable rules. So first of all, this is the variable. So if you want to pass any dynamic values for the URL, right, so then we can use this variable which is enclosed with greater than less than symbols. And next, the rule, like we can attach specific data type to the endpoint. So if the request matches to that endpoint, that variable from the request matches to that data type, then only it will accept the request. Otherwise, will say like not found error. So this is what is the variable rule. So here for variable rules, we can add int, float, or string, or path. So these are the 4 or 5 data types that we can include for variables. Okay, and next is redirect. So if you want to redirect to the other endpoint, so then we can simply use a redirect method. So and also like and next is like URL building. So we'll use this URL for function to build the URL from the endpoint name using endpoint name. So that means this will be useful for Jinja templates, and yeah. And anyways, this redirecting URL we have to import from the Flask module. So this is what, yeah, I think I covered almost everything from the section. Yeah, I think that's it for this section. So in the next section, we'll discuss about sorry. we'll discuss about the HTTP methods using Flask application. So that means get, post, delete, put. So we have different HTTP methods. So we'll see how to create endpoints for these methods and how to process those endpoints. Okay. Yeah. And thank you for watching this video. Please like and share the videos and also subscribe to our channel Coding with Karthik. Yeah. And thank you for watching this video. Yeah. Bye. And we'll meet you in the next session.